Guys, good Wednesday morning. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk here on the I Love CVille Network. The show presented today by Ross Mortgage and Scott Mortgage Morris. The show on Wednesdays, one we very much enjoy with Scott's knowledge, his approachability, his kindness, his empathy, and frankly, the dude's experience is all get out when it comes to real estate and some finance and the mortgage business. Questions already on the feed for Scott Morris. We will get to those in a matter of moments. I am just very much enjoy what we do here, and I enjoy sitting across from guys like Scott and getting to know them for an hour plus every week. And the more I get to know, Scott and Alex and Keith and Quentin and Greg and Patty and the folks that come on the program, the more I realize that doing business with local folks is paramount and will benefit you exponentially in any aspect of life that you're pursuing. And a guy like Scott Morris is someone that you can trust with arguably the most difficult decision outside of who you marry, buying or selling a house. So Judah Wickhauer, let's welcome Scott to the show on a two-shot. Judah Wickhauer is your director. First, good morning. Your colleagues already on the feed. Emily Ann Coulter giving you some props. She's in the mortgage business. Wild Bill McKenzie says, I can't wait for this, and I share the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words, the shout out. This morning, that was one of my focuses in working out and thinking about not just my day and the show and what to talk about, but kind of where we are so far into this year. We're in March. Like, how's everybody doing with their New Year's resolutions? And part of those for me was how are your relationships? Who is paramount in your life? Are you an evangelist for the people that you work with? Like, that's the big thing for me. Like, I care about and want to shout out my realtor partners, making sure that everybody around you is getting the same love that you give to them that they give to you is just a huge part of where we are just in life and in the business that we're in.
How about that topic? A rising tide is good for all ships, and how we are all somehow in this supply chain that we call real estate. We learned from Dr. Lisa Sturdivant, who's the economist for Virginia Realtors, that the real estate business, the second largest impact from a GDP standpoint in the Commonwealth behind government contracting. Rising tide, good for all ships, and supporting each other. Scott Morris.
Rising tide, good for all ships. Yeah, 100%. And that goes back to what I was talking about. Like, always try to give with your palm down. And what I mean by that is giving without the expectation of receiving. So when if you're handing something out, it should be from a place of building a relationship and a friendship in order to help each other grow, not just necessarily always expecting some reciprocity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little over caffeinated this morning, I guess. But yeah, no, that's the more you help each other, the more we all grow.
So guys, questions, bring them. Folks in the business, bring them. We're ready to rock and roll here. The topic of discussion undoubtedly has been Ukraine and Russia. We have what is factually correct, a bully and a warmonger, and someone who is concerned about his legacy as opposed to global relationships and Putin invading another country. It's monopolized the news cycle.
Yeah,
it's created volatility in the markets.
Hey, gives the 24-hour news cycle something to talk about all day, all night.
The literally only positive that may have come from this war is, if you've noticed, COVID is now no longer in the news cycle, and it is now the war. The COVID story has been forgotten by the left and right.
Yeah.
And it's now the war. So anywhere you want to go first to start Russia, Ukraine, and what you're seeing?
So kind of what I talked about. I said when it happens, we're going to see a reflection in, the bond market, and that's going to relate to the mortgage market. But geopolitical events are short-lived, and I think we're already coming out of that, where the talk soon is going to move away no matter what happens, whether this is a long event or a short event, is going to switch to what the Fed is going to be doing related to today is actually the last day of the expansion from the COVID on the books. So there's no more, this is the end of the purchases as it is, but then it turns to what is the Fed going to do in raising rates and in its purchases, and does it start shrinking its portfolio, not just stopping its expansion, and all of that's going to reflect in the future. So, I think we're climbing up back near 2% in the U.S. 10-year, and
it was over 1.9 before the show started.
And I think had Russia not been the headline, I think we'd be 2.2 or better by now. So,
25 basis points, the expectation for the next hike. Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, I think if we weren't seeing the gas price pain, they'd still be all in on going 50. But now it's become we went from quickly the economy's so strong it can take it to the gas situation is going to create a new recession. And I think the truth somewhere in the middle.
Okay, so I asked Alex Erpy about this yesterday. I was even hesitant to use the R word, recession, yesterday. But I outlined inflation, I outlined rising rates, I outlined gas, the pain at the pump. We saw a jobs report that just came out where openings upticked. We certainly see the volatility on Wall Street and the lack of disposable income that's going to be exponentially impacted on Main Street. Do you feel or concern about the R word at all? Do you think about it?
Yeah. Do I think about it? Yeah. Anytime the government is getting involved with the economy, you've got to think, how do most of these things start? And it's typically by them making some sort of move. That's where it all comes from. But I hate to say this because of a friend of mine. She's like, could you use another example? But I think as long as people are buying $8 coffees, the pain at the gas pump is only a part of the equation. If that makes sense as far as a good example.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because there's disposable income there?
Yeah, if things are so hard, are you buying Folgers, or are you showing up at your
White chocolate mocha latte grandes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're saying the cash positions of middle America are still there?
Apparently are still there. But we live in a fast-paced world where just 3 years ago we were talking about how the average individual savings rate is very small, like not enough to take them through retirement, and that most of the U.S. is unprepared. So even if we are a little cash flush, America will burn through that money in a short amount of time.
Scott Morris, guys, dropping some knowledge here. So how about the domestic versus international oil production topic? A topic that is extremely everywhere right now.
It's extremely everywhere. It's easy. I posted something on Facebook the other day about
I saw it.
We're super excited. Our loan was approved. We're finally going to get a full tank of gas or something.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny. And then somebody drops in down in the comments with the Gadsden flag and I don't understand oil prices. It's like, all right, bro, it's a meme. One,
yeah, it was a joke.
And two, let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation. Most of the huge flux we saw was because things got so low because demand for oil was so low during the beginning of COVID. Futures on a barrel of oil futures went to negative territory. That meant you could get paid $5 to put 155-gallon drums in your garage, essentially. So yes, we're going to see record low oil prices, and now all of a sudden we've got the world is back at it, and we've got a supply issue. But you couple that with an administration who campaigned on making life hard for the energy sector. Why would West Texas go and put the power and manpower and money into creating new wells if they expect 12 months from now for someone being the government to go, hey, you know what? We really needed you back then during that whole supply thing, but now it's politically savvy for us to go ahead and crush the energy sector again. Why don't you just stop what you're doing? Why would they go invest that money into new production if they don't have the support of the government for making this profitable over a 10-year period?
All right, so I got a question that has 3 windows for answering.
I like this. I'll jump out of any one of them.
This guy is well read and well thought out. The oil production and impacting us, let's just call it in Virginia. Your territory is Virginia and North Carolina for
Yes.
Ross Mortgage. So we'll say impacting us in the Commonwealth and in North Carolina. How does it impact us short term? And I'm going to define short term as between now and November 3rd, or first week in November. The reason I'm saying the first week of November is the second window is because midterms elections are coming up. And then the third part is long term. So how does this impact us short term, midterm, speaking midterm elections, and then long term moving forward? Are we going to see long term even more of an emphasis on electric and or public transportation? Do we see government have a shift in who's in control? And short term, how does it impact real estate and the average Joe and the average Betty in Virginia and North Carolina?
So let's start with short term and how it impacts your average purchaser going out to make that decision. Right now, I think we've got such an inventory problem that people are going to be making decisions based off of what they can get into more so than any other surrounding circumstance. Investors are probably going to make decisions more rate-based in the coming 12 months than your human who needs a home. Like, that's what it all boils down to. Like, if you've got people out there who, they're having a second baby and they've got to get out of their apartment or whatever situation they're living, they sold a house or living with in-laws and they're like, dude, how do we make this work? Like, I don't think that's going to affect those decisions at all. They're going to go where they can get in and get in most affordably, whether that's...
So you don't even call those emotional decisions, you call those survival decisions.
Yeah, that's if 2 people are getting divorced and have come to a point in their life where they can no longer live together, but they can afford not to live together, you are going to see those people contact a lawyer, separate. One of them is going to refi, or they're going to sell the house, and the other's going to go buy a house, or they're both going to go buy a house, or maybe one of them rents, whatever their situation is, but they're going to stop doing it. If they're having children, they're not going to be like, oh, shucks, we're 6 months into this, I guess we need a new plan. Like, they're going to do whatever they can to make things work for them and their family.
Midterm.
And
this is sizzle reel waiting to happen here.
So oil prices, I think the next step is how do people make life-based decisions outside of just survival? Does that mean that, are they traveling? Where are they traveling to for vacations? How do they structure a budget that makes things work for them? I think that's what starts to show up over time, like when the coffee starts to go away, and the plus whatever that is in your budget or life. How do you do things that make things? Do we see a slowdown in the purchase of second homes, like that sort of thing? That's where we might see some impact. And then long term, I stick by my phrase of you give it a long enough timeline and anything's transitory. So in the long term, this is going to change. How much it changes depending on the billions of dollars being spent on infrastructure that are going towards public transit is to be determined. I mean, we're decades behind, speed rail and, things and even if we got started on the East Coast, we're probably 10 or 20 years and several different administrations and budget decisions and, slow moving red tape before any of that's sufficient. So I don't know. public transportation, boo, electric cars, yeah, you're going to see more of that. I mean, there's a huge market for it. But that is just, with a grain of salt, because we're still, how are we going to, where is the power for that being produced? Like, can we get on board with nuclear? That's such a big question. I don't even know how to really dive too deep into a forecast on that.
That right there is good content, Judah. This crisis, this war here, we were talking about all week, even last week, with stakeholders like yourself, and each, including you, have emphasized, look, housing is as emotional a decision or as personal a decision that someone's going to make as any in their life. So while someone may be mindful of this, when it comes to their primary residence, it's the heart or their heart that they lead with.
100%, yeah.
Now, where it could impact housing and real estate, perhaps is what you're saying, is maybe jumbo market perhaps more than the first-time home buyer more, because the jumbo market and the buyers and sellers in that space are much more considerate or mindful of volatility when it comes to their stock portfolios. And we're certainly seeing tremendous volatility on Wall Street, in large part because of this global crisis. Your thoughts on any of this?
So if you throw the R word in there, and then that's something to consider. But at the same time, I think we're moving more and more towards a world of two economies.
What do you mean by that?
I mean an upper class and a lower class, and less of a middle class. So I think the continuance of a jumbo market to exist is going to exist, and then it's how do we, the conforming loan limits, $624,000. How do you get somebody who's a firefighter and a nurse that collectively make $170,000 a year, who own a new electric car, have 2 kids, and are making whatever decisions they need to, to create a savings that in the future gets them into those starter homes at $500,000. I mean, that's kind of where we're going.
That's a good take. Right there. Questions coming in here on Twitter on what he just said. Dude's echoing exactly what you said. What's happening now is the middle class is going to be pinched and eroded away. We're going to have folks with deep pockets, and then we're going to have folks that are struggling to get by that serve the folks with deep pockets. How do we combat that? Ask your guest.
Just get the government involved. They'll fix it.
He says that tongue-in-cheek. For those that are not seeing the video here, not everyone sees the sarcasm that is Scott Morris when they're streaming in their car. No, seriously, how do you fix that?
I don't know if I'm the guy for that. I live in a reactionary world. I like to think of myself a jack of all trades, but I don't know if I'm here to fix the pain that is going to be felt in the middle class in the coming, 5 to 7 years.
What do you think about the? This is a question that Keith brought up to us, and we'll do it more broad.
Is this the gas price question?
Yeah, but this is one that's a little more. It was a very good question.
It was a good question, but it was texted to me in like a SAT word problem form. If a train traveling 45 miles an hour for 10 hours.
It was almost theory. Do you think the outer counties soften with gas prices? Where do you think gas prices are going to go? And then the follow-up question is, do you think the real estate in outer counties in Central Virginia are going to soften because of the need to drive or spend additional dollars to get to the epicenter of employment?
I mean, I think we get to $6 a gallon locally.
That's a lot.
But do I think the outer counties soften? I think they don't, because they're going to be where the softer price point is, and it's going to have, for anyone who has the ability to split work from home, those are also going to be your higher earners to some extent. So if you have someone who only has to go to the office 3 days a week, but they're also in a higher earner bracket, they already want You know, it's part of that whole, it's part of the American dream. You know, I want to be close to stuff, but I don't want to be that close to stuff. Or I want to live where my family can truly afford to thrive, not survive. So those are going to be the people. As long as we see internet expansion, you're going to see people purchasing further away from cities.
So you're not worried about soft and outer counties?
No, and I think people are going to go where the inventory is and where they can afford to live. And
because Waynesboro or Augusta County to Charlottesville, you work at UVA Health or the University of Virginia, and you're living in Waynesboro or Augusta County or the Shenandoah Valley. I mean, when gas goes from low threes, you're essentially saying it's going to 2x.
yeah,
It's going to 2x from where it was in Q1, is what your prediction is.
100%.
A 2x increase is an additional, what would you say, depending on the car? I mean, roundabout, like $300 to $500 a month.
Probably. That's
Do you think? I mean, right?
So
my
depending
Explorer's a V6.
okay.
2020. Okay, and earlier this year, that Explorer was upper 30s, just under 40 to fill, start to finish. We're talking. Yeah, that's all right. That's right. $16, 16 gallons. Okay, so that would be mid 40s. Now you're talking about at $6 a gallon. You're talking about 75, 80 bucks, 85 bucks. So we're talking an extra 40 bucks a tank a week, probably a tank and a half a week. You're talking 60 bucks and change a week, 120, 240. So you're talking about 260 to 280 bucks for a V6 2020 Explorer right there. So that extrapolated over the course of 6 months, you're talking an extra close to $2,000. $2,000 extra.
Yeah. Now, so who's going to be able to afford that? Someone who can then cut their travel time and not due to driving, making less, not less distance, but less trips. So the work from home environment is, and that is our new normal. There's a huge populace who have basically said, you know, this works. Why do we need to go back to the office? Now there's, you know, certain jobs that are always going to require it, and we've already seen problems having, you know, North Carolina like that. Charlottesville's been a great example of how do we get our service personnel to afford to live in our area.
Which now they can't.
And so now they can't, and that hasn't changed. So those people traveling, their expenses are going to go up, but that doesn't mean that they can buy any closer to where they wanted to work anyways.
Questions coming in. Neil Williamson, Free Enterprise Forum. Welcome to the show. And he likes he champions light rail, the siren song of light rail. He shares a link from the Free Enterprise Forum. Gwendolyn Gale Cassidy, who's one of the smartest listeners we have. She has an economics degree from UVA and a global domestic policy degree from Harvard.
That's who you need to ask that question to.
She's watching in Holland right now. She's also renting, is it a 2-bedroom condo here in Charlottesville while you're in Holland? She says, this is such a difficult question given the volatility of current market conditions. So why don't we go to the difficult questions? J-Powell, 25 basis points, the next raise is the expectation. Why in the hell would you do that right now? I asked this to Alex Erpy here. Why not wait before raising rates and allow potentially, I'm just talking out loud here, I learned from you guys, the increased gas, that could potentially keep inflation in check.
I think that's a catalyst to more inflation.
You think so?
All of your supply goods are going to cost more. That's going to put higher prices at every restaurant that you go to.
Sure.
Every grocery store, so your food costs, and that doesn't even apply to the housing section yet.
Okay.
So you may see a reduction in, you're still not going to see a reduction in housing because we've still got more bodies, more humans than rooftops that have to find a place to live. I mean, they should have acted sooner, but to say why should they do it now, versus just sit around and wait. They've got to take some action. Now, the first action is slow these bond purchases, stop the bond purchases, stop growing the government portfolio, put more back into the investor economy, and let that kind of work itself out. But they're just now starting that. So they've got to make the rate. They've at least got to make the first rate hike, sit back and see what happens.
I know, dude. It's like this. It's so dynamic right now because there's so many moving parts. So here's the concern. You got uptick in gas. Eventually that's going to impact disposable income. I will give you that maybe folks are sitting on some cash right now because we're coming out of COVID, and a good portion of America chose to quarantine or stay at home as opposed to doing really cool stuff like happy hour and restaurants and going out and about to sporting events, spending some money. So they're coming out of COVID, which we are, and they got some more cash more than ever before. Eventually that cash is going to go to this gas crisis we're in. As that cash goes to this gas crisis that we're in, there's going to be less money for Main Street, mom and pops, locally owned businesses. Those businesses.
So you're describing the R word.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
Those locally owned businesses right now have cost of goods that are higher than they've ever been before because of oil, in part, also because of labor shortage, right? And the supply chain that never got fixed. Okay. So if you do not raise the rates and you just allow things to play out for the next, at least to Ukraine and Russia is settled, at least to that's settled, what's the potential fallout that could happen?
Because on a scale of, we're talking about mom and pop and Main Street versus Wall Street.
Yeah.
Because as long as institutions can continue to borrow so cheaply, you're going to see. It's like when all the COVID money was issued. Like who raked the pot? And it's
big brands, corporations,
yeah.
Corporate America.
So that is who's continuing to get the free pass with the Fed policy. So in order to draw more, for the government and to take a bigger rake from a rate perspective, that's where the money has to come from. The trickle down money we're going to burn through. But actually raking from corporations is going to come from a Fed hike, and that's the only way, and it's something that should have been done a long time ago in order to stop what we did by printing 80% of the money that's in circulation in 24 months.
So that's where I'm getting at here. We flooded the American economy with free money, stimulus money, right? Cheap rates. We flooded the economy. That flood of cheap, free money is going to start to evaporate because of this gas crisis. And if that flood of cheap money evaporates because of this gas prices,
I mean, I like and see where you're going in theory.
Could that potentially check the inflation?
But still make the first move, make the first rate hike, stop growing the portfolio, and then take a step back from the table and see what happens.
Gwendolyn is legitimately watching in Holland. This is obviously a brilliant person here. UVA and Harvard. Okay. She says this. Get ready.
Dumb redneck.
Okay.
I'm waiting. Yeah.
You certainly are not. You certainly are not. He's got some self-deprecating to him, and you spend any time with him, and you realize the dude knows what's up. This is 2 paragraphs of fire right here. Okay. Volatility is measured by the day-to-day percentage difference in the price of the commodity.
VIX.
Yeah. The degree of variation, not the level of prices, defines a volatile market. Since price is a function of supply and demand, it follows that volatility is a result of the underlying supply and demand characteristics of the market. Therefore, high levels of volatility reflect extraordinary characteristics of supply and or demand. Okay. One more paragraph here. Prices of basic energy like natural gas, electricity, heating oil are generally more volatile than prices of other commodities. One reason that energy prices are so volatile is that many consumers are extremely limited in their ability to substitute other fuels when the price of natural gas, for example, fluctuates. Residential customers usually cannot replace their heating system quickly, and in the long run, it may not be economical to do so. So while consumers can substitute readily between food products when relative prices of foodstuff changes, most do not have that option in heating their homes. I mean, she's on point here.
Yeah. So, and one of the problems that we have with what's going on related to inflation is a commodity issue, a commodity issue of things, like the cost of things you can drop on your foot, like actual stuff, copper, raw metals, materials. That's where we're seeing. When you see inflation get sticky, it's when you see it get long-term in real, intangible things that are needed to create more things.
Scott Mortgage Morris dropping some knowledge here. More comments coming in right now for Scott Morris that we're going to get to. How about the impact of raising rates? This is from Grayson. Grayson, I love when you watch the program, dude. The impact of raising rates and the impact of mortgage rates going up at a time when inventory is short and at a time when most of us are having our disposable income eroded, as Jerry said. This clearly is going to have an impact on who is able to buy in markets across Scott's footprint or coverage zone. That's from him. Your thoughts on that? He's basically saying that it's going to get more expensive than ever before to buy a house.
That's what we've been seeing for the last 2 years. Now, and part of that, which I've been kind of preaching for the last year here, is that hopefully will put a cap on the insane appreciation in values that we've seen to slow the pace to make that more manageable for people who are trying to enter the market.
Well, I was talking about this yesterday with Greg Slater, associate broker of Ness Realty. And he said what's going to slow this market, basically what you just said, is buyers saying enough already, we're done. We're not going to do this anymore. And then I countered with him and said, with the University of Virginia enrolling more students than ever before this fall, and with UVA hiring more people than ever before to service those students.
Where are they going to go?
And with the data science school, $125 million school that's about to crack ground on Ivy Road, and with UVA taking that boar's head to Foods of All Nations corridor and turning it into an academic village, that may not actually apply to this market.
Well, as I said, we live in a unicorn market. And then on top of that, you've got NGIC and DIA who were going, gosh, if nothing happens in the world, where are we going to, keep these government contracts coming in? And now there's, you're seeing more money flow into the contractor space, which outside of real estate is Virginia's biggest, economic driver. So we live in an area that, is blessed in many ways from the standpoint of we've got people that need a place to live and they've got sources of employment that can pay. Now that again goes back to my split theory. You're going to have, and as long as that exists, that means there can be a good service economy as well. But you're going to find the people who provide for that service economy are still having a difficult time to get into that entry-level market versus somebody who's making six figures coming in to work for the university or one of the alphabets.
Dude, that's content right there. That's legit. Lee Elberson, CEO of Claiborne Education and one of the executives at 8 Hats, watching on LinkedIn right now. Lee, offer some perspective on this discussion, if you could. How do your peers in the mortgage business, what is their take on what's transpiring? Are they bullish? Are they bearish? And what may keep them up at night right now? Because you just came from a essentially a recharge mastermind.
Yeah,
For the mortgage business.
A little bit of that, a little bit of some software stuff, but so it depends on your market, and it depends on your human. Like, I don't do a ton of spending time in other people's heads or staring at somebody else's production going, I wish I was them.
Well, it also helps that you're one of the top producers and you're killing it.
But well, it's because to me it's about relationships and how do you make people's lives better, and are you focused on doing the work that it's going to take to keep those relationships thriving in your world, communicating with the people that you need to communicate with you, making your clients feel educated and informed. Those are the things that are important.
Okay, so how about you specifically?
What keeps me up at night? I mean, it kind of comes down to inventory. Like, you hate seeing somebody who really is trying to get into the market, get their ass kicked for 3 straight months trying to purchase a home. Like, dude, you're making good offers. Like 10% over, waiving inspections, and they still can't get there. And it depends on where they are, and it depends on the LO in the market. So if you're around this area, there's probably people who did a ton of refinances last year who are now going, telling their team, you better buckle up. And, if you're out there doing the work and you budgeted well and you plan well, you're probably not having those emotions. But if you're someone who didn't, maybe that's what keeps you up at night. How I ignored these relationships. How do I get back into them now? Are you someone that people want to work with? Because if that's not the case, you're going to find that there's a lot of turnover in your world. I don't know.
I learned a term on Monday from Jason Kirby of Keller Williams. There's a term that's being utilized, or there's a strategy that's being utilized to close deals called complementary seller possession now, where the seller of a house is closing and selling their home to the buyer. The seller gets the bag of cash, all the money for selling their home. And then they, at no charge, are able to stay in the home that they just sold for 0 to 60 days.
Yeah. So
complementary seller possession. It blew my mind, Scott.
So this isn't that new.
But complementary?
They're calling it that? Yeah.
Normally there's a charge.
Yeah.
There's a rent back.
So, well, in making a strong offer, that's something that, I've had people who are like, sure, depending on their situation, can say, sure, let's do that. Or, look, dude, my lease is up. Like, I've got to get out of this place, like, by April 1st. Like, this is not, they can't be the ones to offer that. So that's what I mean, people going out making very aggressive, very strong offers, but they can't get there in the place of someone who can offer something like that. Now, I've also had people who want to take this like high and mighty route. Like, there's no way I'm letting somebody live in a house for free that I just bought. It's like, how much do you want to buy the house?
Exactly. Right. So you're basically saying it's do what you got to do if you want to win the deal, or if you want to win the race. What
is the difference between that and paying them $3,000 more? Like, stop it. Like, go do whatever it's going to take to win. And then if are you going to feel bad about that 6 months from now? No, you're never going to think about it 6 months from now.
Stacy's asking this question. Do you guys consider the price of gas when approving or disapproving? Disapproving is not the right word, is it? Is it denying, Stacy? Denying when you approve or deny, right, an application?
Yeah.
Okay. So she said disapproving. So, and Stacey, I appreciate the question. She asked, do you guys consider the price of gas when approving, or I'm going to use the word denying someone for an application if you see where they work and where they're trying to purchase a home?
The price of gas, no. But what is viewed is how far. So let's say, and product matters. So for like an FHA loan, 100 miles is the cap. Because it has to do with sustainability. If you're going from somewhere where you were only living, 10 miles from work, and you want to buy a house that is 100 miles from where you work, is that commute sustainable for your lifestyle? And that's something that is considered.
Turn that into a sizzle, because I bet you a ton of people have that question right there. Do you? When does that metric start getting considered?
At 100 miles.
At 100 miles?
Because if you may need a letter of explanation explaining why you were living so far from work, but if the answer is because I tried buying 50 houses closer to work and we couldn't get one, but we got one 100 miles away, that's a reasonable explanation.
Because the reason I'm asking the question is because you guys consider, and we talked about it on the show, of how someone can get denied based on assessments or a tax rate increase because it's a monthly line item.
Right.
Does it become so substantial, rising gas prices, that it now becomes a monthly line item that's considered by?
I can't see how something as, and I'll say transitory, as fuel prices, alluding to.
I'm knocking for that. We hope.
At some point, everybody, it all shakes out in the end.
Okay.
So
what's that mean?
I mean, while we're going through a very tumultuous period and this is a supply problem, and it's a government problem. I don't want to go too far. I talked about that earlier. I don't want to beat that horse. But until the government says we are pro-energy, you're going to have companies that go, then why would we invest more money in something that you're just going to 12 months from now come back and go, hey, we said we liked it, but we didn't like it that much, baby. And it's like,
I love when you do that.
Over time, unless it would have to become so high that it started to, here's where it would affect things, or where it could actually be viewed as an underwriting standpoint. The cost of transportation would have to become so significant that in post interviews on defaults, that would be listed as a reason for it, and then the government would get involved, or investors would say, hey, this is a problem that we need to address, and then it would become an underwriting scenario.
There's the end of the that sizzle reel right there. When have you ever seen that happen? And what other metric?
I don't know that.
I mean, you saw it at 08, 09 with the arms, right?
Yeah. But that's a loan. That's a product.
That's a vehicle of financing.
Yeah, it's a vehicle of finance. That's not an outlying.
That's not a monthly expense.
Because it's not something. Because it can't be forecast. If it was something that could be forecast, then or if I was someone who could forecast fuel prices regularly, I would go trade that, not this.
Dude, you wouldn't be in the mortgage business.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You'd be trading futures and commodities.
Like I said, dumb redneck. Not futures and commodities trader.
There ended on that one right there at that point. So, dude, this is a hot topic. Okay, obviously this is a hot topic because this is what is impacting all of us. I mean, this is as real a topic as anything. How about this from Gwendolyn? Gwendolyn, you're making the show better today. My fear is that we're heading and leading towards hyperinflation, which is going to be much scarier than the beginning phases of Putin's ill-contrived war. If wages are not keeping pace with inflation in our economy, the standard of living for people goes down because they cannot afford to pay for their basic needs and cost of living expenses. Hyperinflation can cause a number of consequences for an economy. People may hoard goods, including perishables such as food, because of rising prices, which in turn can create food supply shortages. When prices rise excessively, cash or savings deposited in banks decreases in value or becomes worthless since the money has far less purchasing power. I've spent time in countries like Zimbabwe, which is probably the #1 recognized country in the world with excessive hyperinflation, and I can assure you the general population is not living in the best of times during periods of hyperinflation.
Jack Dorsey, who I'm not a fan of,
Twitter founder, Square founder,
not 6 months ago said, hey, the hyperinflation is coming. So the fact that he's connected to Square
payment processing
tells me that that's someone that, that's something that, in the back of my mind, tell me that, pay a significant amount of money in taxes. But you're telling me that I'll pay a significant amount of money in taxes and my money will be worthless? Super awesome. That's a fear.
Why don't you like Jack? That's my own curiosity there. Our kind of guy, our age.
Yeah,
doesn't mind some facial hair. Founder of multiple businesses.
There's something I can't put my finger on.
Okay.
We'll call it the too weird factor.
Oh, you're saying he's a little too weird.
Yeah,
a little too out there.
And
eccentric.
I'm a weird dude.
I was going to say, you got a little weird too.
Maybe you gave me $20 billion, I'd be even more weird. I don't know.
Scott Morris. Hyperinflation is something you consider?
I mean, when you talk about your question earlier, what keeps you up at night, I'd say that's not something I consider, but it's a fear in the back of my head. Yeah.
How does hyperinflation potentially impact the real estate or mortgage business?
Who's gonna be able to buy if and
cash is worthless.
If cash is worthless. And then, so you actually saw a jump in Bitcoin overnight on just the government saying, hey, we're going to regulate cryptocurrency. Now, in my mind, how do you get a bunch of the people who are elected into this government to make a true decision on how to regulate cryptocurrency when most of them don't understand and are so separated from basic economics in general? So the question is, who's really writing the policy? So you've got to think that the fact that now some true fiduciary, like the Wells, like Goldman's, have purchased so much of this that they're going to be the ones writing the policy, which would tell you that's why there's some strength behind the coin itself at this point.
Infinite Goat 2, that's their handle on Twitter.
Okay.
They're watching the show. Dorsey is kind of odd. I agree with Scott Morris. LOL. Literally just posted that on Twitter. Infinite Goat 2 on Twitter right now. Dude, you're on fire here. Michael Burrows, Kathleen Vogel, Hutter, welcome to the program, and thank you kindly for joining us. What do you guys think? What keeps you up at night? What is the concerns or fears that you may have? Why are you still positive and excited for this community? Gwendolyn, you are hilarious, Scott, and Rednecks rule on the feed right now.
That's because when we hit hyperinflation, we'll actually be able to grow our own vegetables. And I've got chickens.
I know. Tell them the story about the chickens that just happened.
We went away.
It's a true story here.
Yeah, we went away for 2 days to Richmond. We stayed at the Quirk, and we went to dinner at a buddy of mine, amazing. Grisette, yeah. Donnie Glass, Andy McClure in Richmond. Donnie and I were in Iraq together.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. VMI grad in political science who later on became a chef, and a successful businessman who also owns a wine bar in Richmond as well. Anyways, we go down for 2 days, come back, and I've had a couple predators, like hawks, take out a couple birds. I go to Detroit for this company thing we were doing, and come back, and I've had a fox attack, so I lost 10 birds in the course of 10 days. So now I've got the post office calling me this morning, telling me I've got animals to pick up at the post office.
What? Wait, hold on. Did you hear that, Judah? The fox or the hawk took the birds to the chicks to the post office?
No. When you want more birds, they're delivered by the post office. No. Predators did not drop them off there, and USPS was like, "Yo, come pick your chickens up." But they did call me and say, "Yo, come pick your chickens up."
So where did you find the bodies of the chickens?
So the ones that I know were hawk attacks were so right when we first got back. I've got two enclosures. One is extremely secure, but for the number of birds I have, I need to give them a little more room. So I've got a big 6-foot fence area so hawks will come in during the day and kill birds, and they'll just open them up and leave. Foxes will take a lot of birds all at once. I've got a pair. I've seen them. I actually saw them when I was back, just kind of running around the property. And it's that time of year to where they're having pups. So then you get like a tag team hunting expedition. So it's just if you have chickens, now's the time of year to be hyper vigilant.
Keith Smith, guys, who routinely joins us here on Real Talk. In fact, the star of Real Talk is working on his suntan in the Caribbean as we speak, and he says mail order chickens.
Order chickens.
You gotta love it.
Yeah.
You never know where Real Talk is gonna go on this network. So, dude, people are loving the mail order chicken story right now. Let me get to some comments here. Kathleen Vogel Hutter. Okay. Kathleen Vogel Hunter. She looks like she's in the auction business. She's an auctioneer.
Okay.
Hyperinflation is definitely my concern, and this is being compounded by concerns for the war outcome as well. Things are precarious. I do feel optimistic, though, as everything changes. What goes up comes down. War is not sustainable and always ends. I do believe good can come from this, despite my worries.
What goes up goes down. So that goes back to,
It was your mentality.
Yeah, if the timeline's long enough, everything's transitory.
So we talked about this yesterday with Alex Erpe, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. How reliant do you think we are on a warmonger to find either empathy or get so negatively impacted by economic global sanctions that he stops this craziness?
So I don't think that's it. He's going to get plenty of support from China, India. They control the energy going into the UK. Germany certainly is going to talk as tough as they can, but
they rely on Russia for oil.
Yeah, so does and a lot of the rest of Europe for natural gas. And I think the bigger danger, and this is me stepping way out of my when I say I'm someone who likes to stay in their lane, this is not me doing that. The bigger danger is our disconnect. Like, we traded with, throughout world wars, all types of atrocities, we continued trade with a lot of these people. And for us to step away from that for some view of moral superiority, what does that do when those trade lines become more entrenched through other channels, and then we have to try to buy back in?
Okay, unpack that for me. So you're basically saying collateral damage of this is us
through
terminating trade and economic relationships we have
for some feeling of moral superiority when there's other way, and it's not having a true impact. I don't know how far I really want to go down this, but that's my take.
Twitter is loving your hawk story. Hawks versus birds, the real Ukraine versus Russia. Jesus, I have a Chihuahua and now I'm scared for her.
I'm also this is hilarious. If you're out there, make sure you Google "birds aren't real."
Birds aren't real. Give us a snapshot. What do you mean by that?
You'd have to pull it up, and then you'll. Pigeons are liars.
Birds are not real?
Yeah.
You want me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it a video?
No, it's like a whole.
Oh, I saw that. The car. The truck that was driving down the interstate.
Yes.
And that birds were secret spies of the government. Isn't that what it was? I think you actually posted. I follow your content closely. You posted that on Facebook.
I did back in November, I think.
It was like a pickup truck that had signage on it.
It's like a white van.
Yeah, it had signage all over it that said "Birds are not real," and they are in fact secret spies.
Surveillance drones.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it. Birds are not real. It's a man in a cowboy hat sitting on top of a van with the satellite on top of it with propaganda all over it. This is the world we live in, Scott.
It's like a swag site. Like, they sell T-shirts. It's a novelty.
Oh, so this guy's a jokester.
Yeah.
That's trying to build a brand here. Okay, got it. I did see that. Randy Smith says, "No, don't bring up the birds. Don't let them bring up the birds." Randy Smith, one of the best tennis coaches out there, watching in Culpeper, repping the Pep. Randy Smith out there, and also a fantastic realtor. Randy, what keeps you up at night? What are you excited about moving forward in this year? So let's talk about the applications. It's something that Keith frequently asks on the show. An indicator of what's popping. Where do you want to go with that?
So on a national level, we went from being 2 weeks ago down 1.3% to then up 8.9%. But again, that's a direct reflection of what we saw happen with rates due to the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. And like I said, geopolitical events are typically short-lived. Focus is going to come back to Powell and the Fed and the rate increase, and you're going to continue to see an exit from bonds, an increase in yield, and here we are. But again, people are going to go back to making decisions based off of what they need to do to get into a home. And that's, I think, where the true applications are. Like when you follow that that national average, you got to also look at the percentage that was refinanced. And I think like 7% of that plus was refinanced, which means people who were on the fence got calls, got the email blast saying, hey, rates are dipping again. But then just as quickly as they went down, they came back up.
This is a good question from Heather Smith. She says, in the real estate business, realtors can make revenue associated with the price points of the deals they close. The higher closing, the more money they make. So while they may do less deals this year because inventory is tight, it could get balanced out because price points are higher. She's talking take-home pay. Please ask your guests if that's the same for the mortgage business. Are they commissioned on price point, or is it a flat fee on transactions?
Depends on where you work. And
that's a good question.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that factors into that. It depends on where you work. Like if you work at like a retail institution, like a B&T, something like that, those guys I think get paid a flat. Whereas if you're a broker or a retail LO, you're going to make a percentage. But then again, just like realtors, we face multiple things in trying to solve a deal where we may be giving concessions that come out of true commission to make things work for your clients. And I mean, to give an example, I had a young lady who she worked for the same place for 20 years and had a 401k where she had a significant amount of money. But due to its setup, which is where we qualified and talked to her about where her closing costs were going to need to come from. But due to its setup and some sort of weird profit sharing, she had access to almost none of it. No loans taken against it. You know, it wasn't structured as like.
She couldn't use it as collateral because she had no access to the money. She
couldn't use it as reserves or collateral. So the fact that we did that and my dedication to the people that we work with, I did it for free, essentially. We paid our closing cost. And so that certainly is an example of where we can close deals and not make any money. But also for agents out there, like you need to, there's a whole conversation this past week about, some agents don't do anything and they make all this. It's like, well, actually they do a lot of work. And protecting what you're earning, you're seeing buy side making a little bit less now than what you're seeing from the listing. And you're seeing listing agents being eroded by out-of-market realtors who are offering to do the work for less. And these, what's the name of these companies? Like they do the thing.
The iBuying?
Is it iBuying? I had someone call me. They're trying to sell me on selling leads to realtors through this, and I think it's the race to the bottom. What's Angie's List and these things where a contractor is being you go tell these Angie List people, hey, I'm looking for this, and they send it out to 5 contractors, and essentially they're selling leads to these people.
Yeah.
There's an entire real estate market that is doing the same thing from the listing side, saying, hey, we've already got this warm lead for you, but we want you to do it for 1%. And it's like, let's, as an industry, do everything we can to put the hammer down on those companies because they have, go out and do your own work, create your own value. Don't let these lead sources, these vampires of the industry come in and try to take a piece of what you're doing or what you should be doing organically.
I was, I'm not going to say who. I was talking with a realtor on Friday, this past Friday, that was spending $12,000 a month with Zillow.
I told you about that, yeah.
Sitting in the chair.
I know that this happens.
$12K a month. And he hits $12K, I just said it was a man. Oh, that's all I should say. $12,000 a month this particular person was spending. Not anyone that you've seen on the network. And all they get for that $12K a month with Zillow is their face placed at the bottom of potential listings. And Zillow puts this person's face on the left side of a line next to 3 other people that are basically playing an equivalent amount.
He gets more than that.
And, well, the hope is that they get clicked. Their profile gets clicked, and they're prioritized in the algorithm.
So I know people who do this. So what they used to get, and maybe they've just changed what they get for the money, but what they used to get is a number of qualified calls. So that means it's screened by like a Zillow phone operator, and then those rings go out.
Paid referrals is what you're referencing.
Something to that effect. Now, what they used to get was them directly to them, and now if they don't answer, then they're pushed down. Maybe they're pushed down from that guy to the 3 next people in that photo exchange or whatever. But $12,000, it's $144,000 a year to generate how much are you closing to justify that versus if you just worked your database, could you close the same amount? Could you profit the same amount of money without paying $144,000 in shitty lead generation?
Yeah. So this particular realtor's concern, it's a viewer here. This particular viewer's person's concern was if the inventory gets so tight and his main methodology of attracting clients is this paid referral Zillow platform, but the inventory doesn't approve, then his margin has shrunk considerably.
Sure. Because
he's paying this money for something that cannot potentially materialize because there's no product to sell.
Yeah, that's already a thing. But then my question would be, how many transactions have you closed using that in the last 48 months? And then are you sitting down and spending time to connect with those human beings and get warm referrals and say, make your calls, do your work. Like people want the low-hanging fruit. And when there's enough low-hanging fruit, those resources are a good option. I'm not going to say great, because I still think you're paying for someone else to run you out of business. Because if Zillow could, they'd take those people from you and they'd close them themselves.
Exactly. And go ahead.
And if you've been doing that for a while with that kind of spend, you should have enough of a database, and you should have created enough relationships, which is the key for this morning. Who is your evangelist? Who is out there shouting your praises? Are you connecting with your partners? Are you someone likable that people want to work with? And if that's the case, you should be able to turn that spend off and go create a similar amount of revenue without the big spend in front of it.
Well said. A good example of this, guys, that may be more approachable or tangible for viewers and listeners is the dirty business we call Yelp.
Yeah.
Yelp is essentially blackmailing small businesses across the country. They call the restaurants, let's use restaurants, and they say to the restaurants, you have 50 good reviews and 25 bad reviews. If you don't spend with us X amount of dollars a month, we're going to push the bad reviews up. So the first thing a potential customer will see is the bad reviews and not the 50 good ones. But if you spend X amount of dollars with us each month, the bad reviews will be buried and the good reviews will be what the marketplace sees. How can I get your credit card? I
would flood my own Yelp with, I'm the owner of this shitty restaurant, and I'm here to let you know that you should never come here because Yelp tells you that you shouldn't. And over and over again.
And what's happening is a lot of these restaurateurs are galvanizing together and doing class action lawsuits.
They should.
As they should.
It's just
because that's
thing with this
extortion.
Agent finder, like all these things. All these people are out here to do is erode your value through no value of their own.
Absolutely. Keith says this. He's watching in the Caribbean, so Keith, I hope the suntan is looking good. You cannot apply a Western thinking to Eastern thinking. The Russians will sell their oil via well-established routes, aka the black market. They did this during the USSR. I lived there for years and I've seen it. They will keep making tons of cash. The best way to impact them is to open up our oil and keep it open. This will drive oil down, which will impact Russia. More on this when I return March 15th. And he also says the leads that come from Zillow are not screened by real estate professionals. So that sphere of influence is extremely important. And he said, Yonna and I do 60 to 80 transactions a year consistently and have not bought one single lead That's great stuff right there. That speaks to his skill set as an agent and Yonna's skill set as a broker and team leader. Well, dude, you got Kathleen says, gotta run. Fantastic discussion, and I will check back with this show. I love what you did today.
Thanks, man.
You were on point. I just looked at the time for the first time, and we're an hour and 10 in.
Nice.
You brought it today. So how about some final closing thoughts? Anywhere you want to go for those that are watching?
Final thoughts, opening thoughts, mantra of the day: be an evangelist for your people. If you've got realtors that you love and appreciate, let everybody know it. If you've got a lender that you want to work with, let everybody know it. And then, when I tell you that we should work together, you can let me know who they are, and I can tell you why I'm better. But at the end of the day, love your people, help those around you, do what you can to improve your environment, and that's pretty much it.
Well said. Scott Morris, guys. We've monikered him Scott Mortgage Morris, and he is of Ross Mortgage. You see what this guy is all about. He's local in this community, born and raised in Central Virginia with a Commonwealth and North Carolina territory. Find him online and do business with someone that you know and you can count on. Judah Wickhauer is our director. I am Jerry Miller, and this is Real Talk on a Wednesday. We are back in 1 hour with the I Love CVille show. Take care, everyone.